Yo, thank you so much for coming on the show. Super appreciative. And yeah, one of the things that I was thinking of starting this episode with is the fact that, like a lot of our people that come on the show are from New York. A lot of New York graffiti writers. We've had people in California. We've had people from all over. A lot of them have really done their thing, have showed like abilities in terms of like just painting in general, and also have done a lot of quantity, right? However, no writer, in my opinion, and like I guess in our opinion, has really done it like you. Uh, you're like a really, really unique case, and just in terms of especially freights, like everyone just considers you like the rail god. There's no really like debate. There's not even, in my opinion, a close second. So, seeing as that is kind of the case, why do you write graffiti? Maybe when you started you had one reason, and maybe today that you still do it you have a different reason, but what would you say your reasoning is for writing graffiti?
It evolved. The evolution of the drive to do it changed has evolved over the years, but mostly it evolved very quickly, like in the first month, which was I took a walk at a famed spot in Boston that I won't actually give away, but you probably know it. There's a famed spot in Boston where it's like a train tunnel under the highway, and it was just I was there for some other reason, and it was just wall to wall burners, old school Boston guys. Uh, I'm trying to remember who was down there. Monk, Alert, Sex, Sick 156, Target was down there, Zealot, just a bunch, just burners and characters like both sides. And I was like, oh wow, I got to do this. That was in '97, and I was already a rail fan. I already loved freight trains, and I hadn't really paid attention to. I'd seen graffiti on freight trains, but it didn't register. It wasn't like there was nothing that really was that like blew my mind where I was like, oh wow, not like those walls did at the fame spot. And then so once I got turned on at that spot, that wall spot, one of the first things I thought of was like, ooh, I should do this on the trains. I already know a lot of spots where they park freight trains. And then I was off and running.
What was your interest in freights? Why do you think you were interested in those even before graph?
I used to just like I was drawn to places where there were less people, but it was like just some place to go exploring. I mean, I hike the woods, I'll climb a mountain, I like going places that are like odd or off the beaten path. And from early on, like walking the train tracks just to see what was out there was always cool. I'd pick up. I'm kind of a pyromaniac, or I used to be. So I'd find like railroad flares and shit on the tracks, and like bring them home and make my own fireworks out of them and shit. So I got to walk on the train tracks a lot, and where I went to school, there was I was right near like a crossing, and I'd hear this little dinging sound, and I'd go running out and see the freights go by, and they were carrying like I'm also a chemistry geek, so I was interested in the hazmats, and I was watching like all these tank cars go by with like nitric acid and chlorine, and I'm like, God damn, if that thing derails, that's gonna be a mess, like. So I was just fascinated by the heaviness of the trains, the industrial aspect, the look, the feel, the smoke, the smell of the creosote and the railroad ties. So I was already like super into trains for quite a few years before I even started painting.
What was it about graffiti that made you, stick with it? Because, when you think of teenagers that just started, a lot of them just dabble in it, or they, see it in movies, or they're just like, oh, that's a cool thing to do, whether they're like skating or doing like different subcultures or whatever. But there's like a few in the group that actually would stick with it and, essentially take it to a level like you did. So like what happened in the beginning that you were like, wow, I'm very attracted to this, like writing on freights in particular?
Um, Well, I was always an artist, so when I walked down that tunnel and saw the shit on the walls, I'm like, I got to do this. I got to take my art down here under the bridges and stuff. And then very quickly, I was like, I should put it on the trains too. It just, I loved the idea right away. Once I saw, because you got to remember, this was the Boston Hall of Fame wall, and like the very first thing you saw was like a monk piece, a burner, like on the flank at the tunnel, like as you walk up to it, that's the first thing you see, and it was the monk character for the O, with the hood over his face. And I was like, that's awesome. These are like the guys who know what they're doing. And I was like, I got to start doing this. And so, remind me again where I'm going with this. Like, what was the nature of the question?
So just, what made you stick with it? Because few people try it once or twice, and then, a lot of people are like, oh, this is not for me. But a few people, are like, wow, I'm going to keep doing this.
Okay, so like I said, I was already an artist, and then I found this medium and this thing to do. And a lot of things intersected. My love of trains, my love of walking the tracks, my love of adventure, my love of art. All of it was just like, boom, right there. So once I started, and then I have kind of an addictive personality. So once I started, I was like, oh, I'm gonna take this, like, I'm gonna just see where this goes and keep going. And it's lasted. I've been doing this 25 years, and it's lasted. It's my life's gone through different phases. Like in 25 years, like a lot of shit changes in your life, but this is something that's been a constant. And once I really once I have certain interests, like I have a bunch of different interests. This is pretty much my main one. And once I get into something, I go deep. Like I want to do research. I want to know what all the other people have done. I want to know more stuff that can make me better at it. Even if it's like going on the internet or reading books and looking up old maps and shit. And I want to really like take it as far as it goes, or I want to know what's possible for how far it goes, and investigate. And then once I'm addicted to it, I'll just keep going. And so that has definitely helped me get to where I'm at now.
But when you started in '97, in terms of studying and researching and really learning about the thing that it is that you're doing, whether it be interest in freights and maybe the stuff that they carry or where they go or how they operate and the different types of cars, or whether it be graph, I feel like in '97, the amount that you could find out quickly via the internet was probably not comparable to what we have, today. So in terms of when you started, researching about freights and like understanding that you have a love for that and a love for graffiti in, 97 or even early 2000s, what was it like researching these things? What was it like gathering knowledge in that, you could say, more organic time period?
Well, in the first place, a lot of it was analog research. I mean, I just would park my car and walk some train tracks and see if there was a layup. That went on for quite a few years, and if I didn't find anything, I still had an interesting walk. So I didn't mind doing the manual stuff. But starting around '98 and beyond, there was like 12-ounce profit, and the internet was just getting rolling. And I got on that early, and there was like it was like Bombing Science, and what was the other one that was first?
Robots Will Kill?
No, there was an old site that was just run by a couple of artists who liked graffiti, and they tried to take pictures of graffiti and catalog it. I can't remember. I think it was Art Crimes, maybe.
Okay.
But so there were just a couple of sites, and you could go on there and ask questions about caps and all the stupid, the toy shit when you're just learning everything. And so I did some of that. I did some homework. I just looked around at and I had already done manual homework just looking for trains, so I already knew like spots and stuff, and I had read books like about freight hopping, like that Duffy Littlejohn book about hopping trains. And, it was just a learning process. I met Learn in '99. First writer I ever met was my boy Learn. I know you guys just did a thing with him. He taught me more of the graph side, and I taught him some of the freight train side, and, so we hit it off on that level, and we started YME Crew in late '99. But yeah, it was a kind of a hodgepodge of analog and striking out on my own and a little bit of the internet, and then obviously the internet became the dominant place to look up anything at all. So
How present is painting freights and graffiti in your life today? Are you more like chilling out now, or is it just the same as it ever was in terms of how often you do it, how much you think about it, and just like, I guess we'll get into it later, but like maybe even your daily routine in terms of like painting graph, like what is a good day for you painting graph? How many like cars can you hit a day? As someone who has probably more cars running than just anybody ever, that's like a question to be asked. You know what I mean?
well, I just did a whole car last night, so that if that answers your question. No, I've got I checked my records, and I've got 6,134 freights career that I count, and I have like a minimum level for what I count. You know, like a bubble, one bubble fill, I don't count that, or like, you know, tags or hollows or whatever.
What do you count?
Counting those. It's got to be like a, you know, there's a minimum like a stamp, or I do what I call the double bubble, like 2 bubble throws like on a panel next to each other. That's like the minimum. That's my bar for what counts for that number I just gave you. But I don't know. I just keep going because I love it. I love what I do, and I can't seem to like. I assumed that as I got older, I would slow down and, you know, just go out once in a while, and that's what most of my crewmates who are closer to my age. That's where they're at. Is they're like semi-retired. They get out in the summertime once in a while when the good spot's laid up. I can maybe drag them out to do a freight or two. You know, some of the boys are a little still trying to get it, but they got families and mortgages and jobs and all kinds of stuff. And I'm still living the sort of, you know, just that loose lifestyle where I've got a lot of free time. So I'm still doing it as much as ever. I did 2020 was a good year because, as you know, all my other shit got canceled, so there was nothing to do but paint. And you know, the plague didn't really change my life that much because I was already into avoiding people and you know, and wearing a mask all the time. So, you know, for paint fumes. So I was like, all right, whatever. So I got over 500 that year. Wow. And I've got over 300 this year. So I've been kind of surprised. I've been expecting to slow down, and I just haven't, because I'll be at home and I'll be like, I'm fiending, or, you know, I'll go to the bench spot, or I'll go to the yard and be like, ooh, there's a BNSF laid up. I got to get that, you know, like I just rolled by the bench here and I was like, ooh, there's a BNSF. I'd love to get that car. And then I went around the other side and I'm like, oh, I'm already on it. Cool.
That's hilarious. Do you think that it's possible to, I don't know, like hit every single freight car? Because, you know,
no.
You know, when
short answer, no, but go on.
There's a lot of people that you know, hit the cities. They're all like, yo, I gotta hit every borough. I gotta do all city. Like, I could do this. It's kind of possible to, like, almost, if you think about it, like hit every street in a way, if you catch a tag at least. But yeah, I was just wondering if you ever had like a goal in mind or thought that was in some type of reach.
So the freight version of that is to get up on different. You can't hit every car. There's 2 million cars. There's 2 million cars in circulation, and they're building new ones and taking old ones out of service. So it's really more like probably 2.5 million cars that you've got to like. So that's not happening. But the way to get saturation is you look for all the different brands. You look for all the different car types. Traveling's important because the freights travel, but not every freight travels to me. There's some that'll run like, you know, they run from Texas to Cali and maybe dip into Mexico once in a while, and that's it.
Just stay there,
they
yeah.
never come here. They won't even cross the Mississippi River. So I got to go get those. So I've done a lot of homework, and I know a lot about the railroads, the railroad companies, you know, the big 4, class 1s, short lines, what goes where. So the way to get saturation, the sort of what you're talking about, like trying to get every block, every borough, bombing, the freight version of that is to get all the different lines, to travel and get cars that don't come to you, and to hit all different types of cars. There's a lot of people out there who all they want to hit is reefers, or all they want to hit is auto racks or box cars, And that's nice. I love those, part of a balanced diet. But you got to hit the gondolas. You got to hit the clunky cars, the gravel cars, the maintenance away cars that are all beat to shit. Tankers need some love. Hoppers. So you got to hit it all. And if you're savvy about, I actually collected, I keep track of like all my freights in a log. It's all in like code, but it's like I log every freight. And I also did a count of like all the different reporting marks, and I'm like in the 300 different reporting marks for career for cars that I've gotten. And I'm always looking every time if something comes to me and it's a car I've never seen before, I got to hit that car. And if I'm traveling, I'm like, ooh, what's that? I got to get that car. I was with some guys out west, and they love the auto racks. They were all about the auto racks. And now I'm far from home, so we're going into the yard, and they're headed for the racks, and they're climbing over these other lines of stuff, and I'm like, what are these cars? It's like an ATSF rock car with the Atchison Topeka Santa Fe logo on it. I'm like, I gotta hit this, and they're like, oh, those are just local dogs. They don't go anywhere. I'm like, I'm not from here. I gotta get that car. You guys go hit the racks. I'm gonna paint this car here. So yeah, that's what you have to do to get the full saturation. Is you can't turn down certain cars just because they don't go far, or they're they don't have the nice smooth sides on them.
So you would say traveling is definitely key. Like if you were to stay in let's say you stay in your city, right, or town, or wherever you are, or even your state, and you hit up every single day freights. First of all, it would take years of every single day to get to the number 6,000 and something. Not to mention as some cars go out of service. But second of all, even if you did that, you would have had to do it in different states and traveled to be able to truly be all across America, because some, like you said, some don't go everywhere.
Right.
So the key is not just consistency over years, but consistency and spreading wide and understanding the different trains and the different companies and where they go in order to get that what you keep calling saturation, like, which is a good explanation of what you have. Like one time I drove to I drove to North Carolina, and or maybe South, but whatever, and I went to sleep in a car, and then I woke up in the morning, and then the sun came up, and I slept in like a lot, like a random parking lot, because I was just trying to find a place to sleep in the car. And when the sun came up, I saw there was an Ichabod end to end, and I was like, dude, like what the fuck is this? Like I was just like super northeast, and you were on every line, and then I come down south, and and it was the only one. It was the only freight in there, and then it was an Ichabod end to end, and I'm like, truly it is like it is saturation, and I've thought a lot about like the concept of New York standards, like all city, and then the idea of like, I guess, freight saturation, so all country, and which one's like harder or easier to do. And it kind of seems like, just by the fact that really only, in my opinion, one person has done the freight version, which is you, in my opinion, then it must seem like the freight version is much, much harder. Because if you did 6,000 somethings in New York, it would top, like, I don't even want to know. You would be in jail is what you would be.
Yeah, pretty much.
You would be in jail, and your house would be raided.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you think about that in terms of like freights versus streets, and why did you take a liking more to freights rather than streets? Was it just because you were already into freights?
I do believe in being well-rounded, but it's obvious that I have specialized in freights, and so I do want to distinguish. I want to give it up for the real bombers, like people who have gone all city, especially in a tough place like New York or LA or something. And they get there's a lot of heat there, and your risk of getting arrested is higher just doing the actual actions. So I think it was Chip from NSF. He had a quote in the original like Freight Train Graffiti book where it was like, it's not a badge of courage to do a lot of freights. And I don't disagree with that. I have had to get certain cars where I'm like I got to get my Tropicana. I got to get, there's certain cars that I'll see and I'm like, ooh, that looks like a hot spot, but I need that car. And I'll take an extra risk, and I'm taking about as much risk as like maybe doing a highway spot. But that's about as hot as it gets for freights. And I use my intelligence and my knowledge to make my life easier, to make the get over easier by, painting in the sweet spots, knowing the schedules, painting, researching chiller spots to do freights. So I want to make a distinction between people who have the balls to go all city, and they're out there in public and they get chased, and there's a lot of and there's more like Vandal Squad attention on that kind of stuff. I want to draw a distinction between that and going like all continent with freights. I'm not putting down what I do. I'm just saying it's a different kind of game.
Yeah.
Different aspect of the game. I've bombed. I've done street stuff. I've done highway spots. I've done ton of track sides and stuff like that, and some bandos. Obviously, everybody wants to go out and do a bando when you got nothing else popping. But I definitely have specialized, and I don't mind people pointing that out and saying, well, maybe you've been at it longer and you've done a lot of work, but it's been in this lower risk atmosphere. And, I don't mind people pointing that out. I don't mind pointing that out. So I got to give it up to the people who really, fucking crushed like cities.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on, for example, hitting the New York City subway system, or when you go international, maybe hitting, that country's subway lines, doing those kind of trains, for example? What are your thoughts on all that kind of stuff?
I felt like I never aspired to be like a clean train monster. I know that passenger trains are where it all started. The New York subways is where this all really got going. That's what it was about originally. And I give it up for that. I give a lot of respect to that. But I got into the game too late to be in a situation where those trains would run. To me, I absolutely salute the balls and just the animal attitude and the sort of military planning. Like some of the European guys are just nuts with the way they'll they're cutting fences, they're masked up, they're doing their piece, they're getting flicks, then they're buffing it silver so they don't get busted for it later. That I give that a lot of credit. I'm not shitting on that at all, but as far as what I'm into and what I'd like to do is I want to paint something and have it run. I just want it to run. And I got into graph really too late to be like a clean train king. And even if I wanted to go for that, because it's a little bit on the comeback in New York, as you guys know. There's been a little resurgence since the days of it being locked down. Even if I aspired to that, it's not really my thing, just because it just won't run. It's going right to the buff yard, and maybe you got your flicks, but to me, the flicks mean less than the actual memory of doing it and the fact that it runs around and gets seen. I mean, I've got freights that are over 20 years old that are still, you can barely read them, but they're still hanging on. Yeah. And that's a lot of return on my effort.
Yeah, you talk about the fact that there are some graffiti writers who their work ethic within graffiti just borders on a level of just mental illness. Like they go so hard that you can almost just describe it to that. And when I think about your graph, I kind of put it on that same, definitely put it on that same level, like, holy shit, this many for this long and this much widespread. However, it's even more because of the fact that people will do tags, people will do maybe go out with mops, then sometimes they'll do rollers, maybe they'll do hollows, but yours is very stamp-like. It's very like you do your thing. It's very you. The TikTok letters, it's all within your thing. And you've done it so many times that I have to ask whether it gets old after a while, the repetitiveness of it, going into a yard, seeing the things you've seen hundreds and hundreds of times. You said once that you kind of miss those innocent toy days, and you're kind of at this point far past that. and you just kind of know what you're doing, you know. So what do you think about that?
That's kind of a polite way of saying I do the same shit over and over, which is I'm totally fine with that. I almost wish I was bored of the TikTok, but basically I'll do something until I am sick of it. And for reasons I don't understand, I'm not sick of that thing yet. For me, I used to, when I was a toy, when I was trying to come up, and a few years after I got reasonably, competent at actually writing and painting, I tried to work on like black book stuff. I tried to work on letters, improve my hand style, try to get those bars, that sort of Wayne COD kind of style, that's just. And what I found was I kind of beat my head against the wall for a while. I can freestyle something. I can do some different stuff from time to time, but what I realized was I don't have a huge amount of talent. I'm not like the style master. And I really got to like the look of those of the block letters, the TikTok, the simple stuff. And so I sort of maxed out on beating my head against the wall trying to improve styles, letter styles. That's blasphemy to some people in the game who are like it's all about letters, especially like veterans who came up in the 80s, 90s or whatever. They're like it's all about the letters, and I'm like I agree to a point, but it's also about getting your name out there with a certain style. And it's not that block letters are hard, but I've done something that's recognizable and has become a trademark. And so that is kind of my style. The TikTok and the skull is like, oh yeah, that dude. Like you can't miss that. And so when it comes to why have I not gotten sick of it yet is I want my signature piece, like the TikTok and the skull. I want that on as many different lines and as many different types of train in North America as I can get. That same thing. So there's an element of like branding. There's writers you've never heard of. They're like the hometown kid, and they're actually decent stylists, but they change their style every time they go out, and their shit's hard to read. So you could look at 20 of their pieces, not know it was the same guy, and only be able to read 2 of them. You're not getting known that way. I mean, it's fine if you're not trying to get known, and this is just what you want to do. You want to paint bandos and under bridges and just flip styles, and you don't care who knows what you do. You just love it. That's fine. But if you're trying to get known, if you want to be up and you want to be known as that dude, you do have to pay attention to the idea of branding. So your stuff should be legible, especially on freights. Legible stuff just makes more sense for freights. And if you change up your style every time and people can't read it, you're sort of diluting diluting the effects. I think now, if I really wanted to, I could flip some completely different shit and just put my hand style next to it in my cruise, and people would be like, "Oh wow, that's the same dude," and I could probably blow some people's minds with that if I really wanted to do that. But I just haven't gotten sick of that that same piece yet.
No, it's funny because I mean it's true. If the train is in motion, what you're seeing is legible stuff, right? And with your stuff, honestly, man, even if your styles are similar, there's something about it that it's still different. Like whether it be the type of train you hit, whether it be the color scheme you use, or even, it might sound crazy, just the environment it's in, whether it be like off a lakeside or in the woods or anywhere, it just still feels slightly different. You know what I mean? And
see, that to me is style. That is an aspect of style that isn't strictly about, how is this connection between this bar and this other bar? That's like an overall, that's like a sort of zoom out.
like experience. Yeah.
Experiential style. A way of looking at style. If you see something I do and it's different from the other shit, but you still know it's me, that's style.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the deal with the skull? Why the skull? I know that you've talked about the acceptance of death and the thought of death in life in general, and how our time is limited and life is just trying to fit in as much cool shit as you can before the Reaper touches your shoulder. So what do you think about death, and what is the purpose of painting the skull? Why did you choose that as your character?
Well, I've been drawing skulls since I was a kid, so it's just like that was automatic. I don't know if you've ever seen the sort of bone heap pattern I do.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just all skulls and bones, like a fill or whatever. I was doing that in like, junior high study hall, just doodling that. I got a notebook from back then that it's an entire page of just the bone heap stuff.
Wow.
So I've been doing skulls forever, and I just love skulls. And I think I said this before, but like there are people who, I don't know, they're kind of maybe older or more conservative, or they shudder at the idea of mortality. And I'm like, we're all gonna die, like. And some of those people are like, ooh, skulls. Can't you paint something nice like flowers or whatever? And I'm like, you have a skull. And someday it's going to be bald. And, you better get used to that. And, carpe diem.
Matter of fact, right now. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in terms of death and the thought of time as being limited, you spoke about how like the thought of money and how money is kind of needed to get stuff that you want. But if what you want is to like paint and what you want is to have your time be your own, then in a sense, like you can forego that in a way and then just spend more time doing that and then cutting out the middleman. What are your thoughts on money and our capitalistic society?
There's no way around money. If you want to live, you have to pay some bills. And if you don't want to pay any bills, you have to be a survivalist living in a tent in the woods. And even that's probably illegal, because one of the weird things about capitalism in terms of real estate is all the real estate is owned. Mm-hmm. In the old days, you could just strike out into the wilderness and be like, yeah, I'm going to claim this plot of land, build my shack on it, and go hunting. And there was nobody there to argue with you about it. Then there was, colonialism, where actually there were already people there, but the new people came and were like, fuck you, and, genocide or whatever. But nowadays, like, there's nothing left. There's no territory that isn't claimed. So you owe, it's almost like, if you think about feudal times, like, the serfs, the peasants, they owed a tithe to the landlord, the whoever owned the land. You had to pay them something to be there. And the whole earth is taken. Everything's taken. So you got to pay somebody. You got to pay some bills somehow. So you got to make some money somehow. I try to keep it on the minimalist end, where I want my time more than I want a lot of money. But I got to make something. So as I've gotten my name out there and gotten bigger, and I'm super averse to like working. I just fucking hate working. I can't make myself get out of bed and show up for like shitty jobs. I can't do that shit. And I don't mean I'd rather not. I mean, like, I've tried it. And I got fired. I've walked off of jobs before lunchtime because I just could not deal with, like, I freak out. I do have some issues. I'm on the spectrum, and I've got some other some issues that just keep me from holding down a regular kind of job. So, but I still have to survive. I still have to get by. So I've cut my expenses. I've sacrificed a lot of creature comforts. The place I live is kind of like not awesome. But I've tried to keep my expenses to a minimum and have more free time so I can go paint or do whatever the other things are that interest me in life.
So you're essentially making a decision to have time be more valuable than let's say the place you live, or creature comforts.
Yes. Yeah, you gotta strike a balance. You gotta sacrifice something to get what you want. There's no unless you got handed, if you were born rich or something and you got handed everything on a platter, you have to make sacrifices in order to get what you want in life. And so the sacrifices I've made are ones that a lot of people don't choose, especially in this country or in a capitalist society. But there's no getting around paying some bills. So I'm at the point where, I've made a name for myself in graffiti, and people like, oh, you got to monetize. And I'm like, I don't even like that word, but I'm not like some kind of purist where I won't, people want to buy art from me. Yeah, I'll sell you a piece of art, I got a clothing line now on brickandmetal.com. We got stuff on there. I got stuff for sale on benchmasters.one. And I sell art through like kind of, through friends or through like word of mouth or whatever. I'll have somebody drop something of mine on IG or whatever, just put it up and be like, hey, this is available. Put it in front of the right set of eyeballs. And
have you always?
So I'm not averse to that, and I'm not averse to making money. I wouldn't mind moving up in those terms, and maybe especially as I get older, I might eventually like to have a house or a more comfortable place to live. So I'll be looking more at like career stuff in the next few years. But
have you always been kind of on the minimalist side, or was this, a lot of people, to them, like having a house is already minimalist. Like that's just like the minimum of what you would have in this society. People consider like having a house, having a phone, having a car, having a this, having a that. But before you know it, like you're not actually really minimalist. You're just relatively minimalist because everybody has a lot of shit.
yeah.
Have you always been minimalist, or is this more so of a thing that has been brought about by like the conditions you find yourself in, which is the conditions we all find ourselves in, which is like this society that makes it, pretty hard to even just having a quote unquote comfortable life can be rather difficult if you want all the stuff that a comfortable life entails and usually comes with in our world.
Yeah, I was cynical at a fairly young age about the entire way that things proceeded, and the things that people took for granted or assumed were necessary. I was always asking like, well, what do you need that for? Like, it's so expensive. Like, you could just go without. And people were like, what, are you crazy? And I'm like, no, I don't see the need for that. Or, I'm not shitting on what anyone else chooses. Yeah. It's just a matter of like, for me, I see here's the cost and here's the benefit. And if the cost is bigger than the benefit, I don't want it. And my math often works out differently than most people's. So I'd say it started off more circumstantially, because I had trouble holding down a job. I had trouble affording the stuff that most people took for granted. And then after a while, I was like, man, it takes too much work to get all of these things that I could just do without them and find a way around having high expenses, and that way I could have more time. And so I think it started off circumstantial and just sort of melded into an attitude. And it may come full circle if I can, if people want to buy my art and people like what I do enough to pay good money for it, then I could go right back into that thing and move up a ways.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that, the advancement in technology and let's say the age of social media nowadays would be a benefit to you, or would you say overall society is better off without it?
I guess I wouldn't frame it in society is better off without it. It's kind of inevitable. Like these are the waves of change that you can't dodge and you can't roll back. So you just have to adapt and take a position on what's going on. I've got nothing against technology per se. I do hate where technology's going. I haven't liked a computer. I don't like smartphones, and I haven't liked a computer since like Windows 98. Because back then, you told the computer what to do, and it did it. You had to know your commands. You had to type in your commands. You had to know how to open a file. The computer didn't do a whole bunch of shit that you didn't ask for. And the computer didn't spy on you and send all your information back to the maker of the computer or the maker of the operating system or the whatever, the advertisers or the manufacturers or the corporations that want to get all your info and monitor what you do. And so the fact that technology has gone the way of the surveillance society So surveillance capitalism, I'm opposed to. I hate it, and I don't want to be a part of it. And but it's also hard to do the kinds of business things that I'd like to move into. You know, I've had opportunities like, oh, hey, do you want to be in the show? Can you send me flicks or something? I'm like, no, I don't have a smartphone. And they're like, oh, I've missed out on some opportunities just because I physically can't. You know, they try to send me a video to my flip phone. It's like, no, that's not.
Why
not
is it
working.
that you dislike smartphones?
Just because they're so already part of the surveillance society. Like they're getting rid of, like, the 3G network, for example, goes down this month. So I got to get a new phone because I'm still on 3G.
Oh wow. Like that technology is going to be gone, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have to get an upgraded phone, but like the 5G network, like if you're on 5G, they know your if your phone's on and you're carrying it, they know your location within 2 feet. They can make maps of where you just walked. I don't want a map of me scoping out the yard. You know, like I don't want a map of me walking around the spot. People have gotten busted already with this stuff. There were some guys that, and this is years ago, there were some guys that came to Boston, and they, a local guy invited some European dudes to do cleans in Boston. And they rented one of them zip cars or something, which had a GPS unit in it. And they drove around, they scoped out this yard, they drove over here, scoped out this yard. And they drove around it like 5 times. It showed where it parked and for how long. And, when they got popped with bags of paint, cops looked at all that and were like, yep, these are the guys. So they got popped for that. And this is a long time ago. Yeah. This is like, God, this must be like 15 years ago. And it's only gotten worse since. So one of the things about social media, smartphones, the whole thing with IG and Facebook and whatever is people are just giving themselves away.
That's
I still remember the day that I first found out that the microphone in a smartphone is recording what you say, and it's it's using voice recognition and coming up with search terms and then spitting back ads that have to do with what you were just talking about. I was talking to my boy about trying to get deals on paint, or trying to find like older cans of paint that are discontinued, and like lumber, some lumber places will have a little dusty paint rack that people forgot about. And 30 seconds later, an ad for lumber comes up on his phone, and I'm like, what's with that? And he's like, oh, I must have left the microphone on. And I'm like, what? Like, you're wearing a wire? Like, what? So, like, it's almost like everybody's a snitch now. People are snitching on themselves because they have a device that's listening to everything they're saying, recording it, and sending that information out to whoever's receiving that information. I don't know who that is necessarily. It goes to the phone company.
And they sell it.
They sell it. They'll let cops look at it without a warrant. I mean, AT&T and a bunch of other phone companies were actually busted for, like, the police just asked them, hey, can we look at a bunch of people's phone records? And they're supposed to say you need a warrant for that. And AT&T was like, nah, yeah, go ahead. We'll just give you that shit. Yeah. And they had a policy of, oh, yeah, we erase everything after 5 years, like text messages and everything we've recorded, we erase it once it's 5 years old.
Because imagine the hard drives.
Yeah, and they never did. That was their stated policy, but they actually don't do that because they'd have to pay someone to do it. It's easier to just keep the stuff forever than it is to hire someone to erase it.
My friend Jordan once came up to me and said, people really walk around with things in their pockets that have like 5 cameras and microphones and speakers all over it, and think that they're not watching and listening to us.
Yeah.
Which is like pretty funny, and you just call it a phone. You don't call it a thing that has cameras and microphones all over it. But that is, in a sense, what it is, Yeah. And like you got to wonder sometimes about that selfie camera when you're on it. Like, is someone on the other side? It sounds crazy, but like.
Well, the new shit is. Read about China. Read about the surveillance society in China, and you'll just like you'll like blow your own head. You'll just shoot yourself. It's like it's over. In China, it's over. I crossed going to China off my bucket list.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see the world. I love traveling.
Yeah.
But I crossed China off my bucket list once I found out how bad their surveillance society is.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen now what's going on over there, but they're literally building camps for quarantine zones, like building whole cities, like condominiums that are monitored for like the virus.
Oh, yeah.
It's still going on right now.
They've also done that for, people that they want to repress, like the Uyghurs. There's I've read a firsthand account of a woman who was a Uyghur and got sucked into the prison system, basically. And they built a whole village for them. There's QR codes on your house. It's ridiculous. It's worse than George Orwell ever imagined in 1984.
Have you ever considered I'm sure you have, but have you ever, what are your thoughts on like getting arrested for graffiti, for painting, for freights, and all the freights that you've done, from the things you've heard of other people getting arrested, or maybe even researching a little bit into the laws and how that goes? What can you say about that?
I don't know. I like to be careful. I like to use my brain and just be smart about how I go about it. I think the people who, and I'm not saying people who got arrested for it are dumb, because anyone can get unlucky. It's an illegal activity, and shit happens. But I've always tried to use a lot of caution and not really worry about that. And the thing is, like, somebody in the industry or somebody in some cops would have to get a bug up their ass about it, because I've got backdoor contacts through that go into the railroad industry, and a lot of the guys who work for the railroad, from brakemen, just the guys who actually do the real work on the ground, all the way up to like CEOs. Some are like, yeah, we love that shit, or we don't care, or like, yeah, some of that shit's cool. So it's almost like, I don't know who hates it so much that they're gonna really come down. But I'm just, I don't know. But I'm still active, so I'd still rather just use my brain and take the kinds of precautions that other people find that are a pain in the ass. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll walk in the long way, I'll park further away, and bike the rest of the way in. I'll research some people just like roll up to the spot, park, and like they're painting inside of their own car. Like that, you're not going to find me doing that. Mm-hmm. And then people post like the freights they just painted. They take flicks and post them on IG. They haven't even left the spot yet. It's like, geez, like you won't see me doing that. But I don't know. I think most of the vandal stuff that gets people heated in cities and like transit authorities and stuff is like clean trains and city bombing. That's what. Like the nasty stuff, the more vandalistic damage is in if you make a name for yourself being a hardcore vandal and you fuck shit up. That's I think who's going to get the attention. I wouldn't be surprised to be busted on the spot for doing freights in a certain spot and locality. But I'd be surprised if they're making cases for like people who did too many freights. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem like it's a priority.
How many cans would you say you go through in, let's say, a month of heavy painting?
God, I don't know. People have asked me this math before, and I can never figure it out. But I don't know. I'll take a backpack into a spot, and I'll have like 18 or 20 cans, and if it's a good night, I'll empty them all. And then if I do that a couple times a week, do the math. Little higher in the nice weather, or if I'm traveling, I'll go through more cans.
Now, do you think that freight graffiti is here to stay? Because when we spoke to Learn, he was kind of talking about how when he had started, you'd go to a yard, you'd go to a layup, and there'd be space pretty much all the time, and you'd be excited when you could see someone else's piece, someone else's graph, because you didn't always. It was kind of more new, and I believe sorry if I misquote, but I believe he said that there was only like 50 people in the entirety of America or something, 50 to 100 at that time painting freight. Whereas now it's, a different story. And as technology increases, maybe we ship things in different ways. I don't know. I really don't know much about freights like that, but I'm just imagining that the way that our society shifts and maybe there's different ways of doing things. Do you think freights will ever come to a point where either A, they're obsolete, or B, every single shit is just hit up? So then it's like you're just going over people at that point.
I think it's probably more the second one. We've got oversaturation now. There's a lot of crap on the lines. There's a lot of toys doing it. And there's also a class of, there's a couple of different things going on freights. There's some stuff like, there's a lot of kids now coming up don't even know anything about the idea of having letters or having like a decent foundation of being able to paint. They just throw some shit on there that looks like a kindergartner did it, like that anti-style stuff, that hipster stuff. I can't stand that shit. I'll go right over that. I don't have any respect for it. There's also a class of writer who is, because of the internet and because like you can sort of find some homies pretty quickly right when you start. I floundered around for 2 years before I met another writer in person. Trying things on my own, trying caps and trying to figure out how the hell they covered so much space in so short a time. Nowadays, you can just get all that information right away. So there's a whole generation of kids they're actually really good. They know how to cut and chop. They're good with Montana paint or whatever the latest brands are. They get all the different tips for it. They can paint a competent piece, but it's kind of boring. Like it's almost generic. It's competent yet generic. There's a lot of that on freights. And a lot of those people are going over each other and, not respecting each other. And I like Lauren was saying, we came up in an era when there was a lot of space available. And now that several generations have gone by and I'm still at it, I'm coming up on stuff like, oh, who's this? And, it's faded. The stuff that's faded and corroded, I almost want to go over that less than some brand new, boring, generic piece, because that old shit was like, I don't know if that's like a Yen 34 or a Dax or something that's like OG in the freight game. But that's the thing that's more likely to get gone over by some kids who don't know their history and just do generic pieces. As far as where it's going, now there is a lot of talent. There's a bunch of youngsters or people who are relatively new who are like doing some crazy shit, like really rocking good styles, getting a lot of work, putting in a lot of work, and that stuff rides. And it's definitely stuff I wouldn't go over. So I give them props, but I think the freight system, in terms of like, our freight's going to go away, it depends on a convergence of factors. I think the freight system is too big not to be bombable. It may get to be where there's like more surveillance, more drones, more issues in more places, but there'll still be that cuddy town where they don't have that yet. They haven't caught up. It's not cost effective for them to run drones and monitor trains all the time. So they'll park. There's stop lines. They can't protect every stop line. So people will always be running out there and getting at least fill-ins on trains, if not doing pieces. And it's up to do the railroads really want to spend that much money to clean the trains and police the trains against graffiti? A lot of them are like fine. I think a lot of them are just like they're running a business. They want to get the freight efficiently from A to B without it getting stolen, fucked up, or whatever. So graffiti really doesn't hurt their business a lot. Yeah. Whereas buffing all the trains all the time and hiring security guards and buying more surveillance equipment to monitor the trains all the time just for anti-graffiti purposes, that's not cost effective for a railroad. They just can't be bothered. And the reason I know this is, for some of it, I have some back channel contacts that talk to me about this stuff, but you can see it in some of the brand new cars that are just, some of the brand new fleets that are like the big high cube box cars that are just hitting the rails now. They're putting all the numbers and stuff up high, the reporting mark and the weight limits and stuff, just because they know the bottom half's getting painted. So they've kind of capitulated to the idea that graffiti is going to happen on these trains. So let's just put the important stuff out of reach. So I think there'll always be, I think there'll be a future for writing on trains for a while yet, and it may evolve. You may have to be smarter. You may have to do more things. You may have to research your spots better, but people will get up on trains for the foreseeable future.
Do you ever think about like when you will stop, or like a certain age, or any, a lot of people say like as long as I could fucking walk or be conscious in this life, I'll do it,
Yeah.
So
that's a good segue, because I was about to add, I have a feeling I will age out and be done before they could possibly shut down all graffiti on freight trains. I don't have that many years left where I'm going to be going this hard, I think. I mean, I kind of said that years ago, but here I am today. But I think there is I'm eventually going to reach my limit and have to, I don't know that I'll ever retire fully until I'm dead, but I might have to drop it down to, like, maybe I'll just go out and do monikers, or get that. There's just something about a uni silver on rusty metal that I'll just never, I'll never lose the love for that particular, for the feel of that. But yeah, I'm more, let's put it this way, I'm more than halfway through my freight career.
You guys have anything to say? If not, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, and respect all that you've done, and we'll continue to do. So thank you for speaking to us and coming over here.
All right, I appreciate that. Can I do a couple of shout outs?
100%, yeah, 100%.
How about some plugs?
Yeah, 100%. Anything you want.
Back. Look at the anti-capitalist guy plugging all my businesses. Well, I want to shout out. There's a couple people we've homies that I've lost in the last few years. So I want to say rest in peace, Spree, Zaire, and Mize from Circle T crew, and they rep some other crews as well. Billy ORG from OQB crew. Just want to shout them out, and then all my boys and all my crews: YME, Circle T, BMC, SFL, OQB, 3YB, and my boys at Trout Art Supply. My dude Nick at benchmasters.one, Railyard Studios. We've got a project going down there where they're going to open a railroad graffiti museum down in Nashville. Check them out, railyardstudios.com. And I know I'm forgetting somebody, but that's the way it goes.
So one more time, where can you buy your T-shirts you were mentioning earlier?
Those are at brickandmetal.com. Brick and Metal, all one word.
Cool, man.
And that's not just my stuff. A couple of my boys also have designs on, clothing and a few other items.
Cool, man. Yeah, I just want to say, man, your legacy is nothing short of amazing. So thank you again for coming on the show. And, I'm hoping to see your stuff again in the middle of nowhere. We'll wake up in the car.
100%.
Well, thanks. And, I'm just doing my thing, and I haven't stopped loving doing what I'm doing. So I'll keep going till that happens.
Thank you. Peace.